Now, Penny Farmer spent the best part of 40 years trying to uncover the truth about what happened to her brother. He was brutally murdered while travelling overseas with his girlfriend.
Penny's search crossed continents and took many twists and turns, but eventually the killer was found. And now Penny tells the story of this true-life crime mystery in a new book. We're going to talk to her in just a moment. First, let's get the background to the story with Dave Guest.
It's late 1977, and in Manchester, a young couple are excitedly planning their trip of a lifetime. Chris Farmer and his girlfriend, Peter Frampton, were to explore Central America. But less than a year later, they were dead.
It was a brutal murder. It was July 1978. They'd gone on the holiday of a lifetime, backpacking around the world for a year, and then they met up with Duane Boston.
The couple had hitched a ride aboard Boston's boat. He was to kill the pair and dump their bodies overboard.
He beat them up. He hooded them, tied them up, and then threw them overboard whilst they were still alive to drown.
It was to be some time before two bodies found off the coast of Guatemala were identified as the missing British couple. And that only happened thanks to the work of a private investigator Chris's family had hired in Central America. But it was to be decades before suspicions about Boston became firm facts. In 2015, Chris's sister contacted the Cold Case Unit at Greater Manchester Police, asking them to reinvestigate the case of a couple first reported to GMP as missing back in 1978.
GMP didn't hold any records centrally about the missing two young people, but a retired detective had kept a copy of the case file, remarkably, in his shed for 38 years.
So we gathered the information that the Farmer family provided to us and also the information from the retired detective, put it all together, and then I contacted Interpol.
Interpol told GMP that officers in Sacramento, USA were investigating Duane Boston over the murder of his wife. His sons then made fulsome statements in which they described having witnessed the killings of Peter and Chris when they were children aboard Boston's boat. And so, armed with the evidence of his own sons, the police were able to arrest and charge Duane Boston with 2 counts of murder. But he never stood trial. 6 months or so before he was due in court, he died from kidney failure, having apparently refused to take prescribed medication. So Chris and Peter's families never did get their day in court, but at least they did get answers about what happened to them. Dave Guest, BBC Northwest Tonight.
Well, Penny Farmer is here with us in the studio now. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
Penny, obviously this was something that gnawed away at your family, to say the least, for decades. What was it that made you want to take it on and find out what happened?
Well, as you say, it's haunted us as a family for 38 years, and obviously we've never forgotten Chris and Peter. It was that the circumstances and the nature of their deaths was just horrific. And I don't know, it was just one of those light bulb moments in 2015. I was out for a dog walk with my mother and we started talking about Chris, as we often do. And I just suddenly thought, why don't I look for Boston and his 2 sons on the internet? So I literally ran back and got out my laptop and didn't really take a great deal of time to actually track them down.
You found them on Facebook, and it's interesting,
yes.
Dave mentioned the 2 sons there when they were little. They had, over the years, tried to draw the police's attention to their father, hadn't they, for killing their mother, and they witnessed what happened on the boat.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, unbeknownst to us, they had been going to the police, both in America, in Sacramento, where their father lived, and to ringing Scotland Yard in this country. And for some reason, the case just fell off a cliff edge in the 1980s. We still don't really know what happened, but there were no case files. And every time the call came in from America, they couldn't connect anyone in this country, even though they said they'd witnessed 2 British citizens being horrifically killed and tortured.
I mean,
nobody could join the dots.
It's an incredible story, isn't it? And if it hadn't happened to your family, it's almost incomprehensible, isn't it? How much you've gone through. He was finally tracked down. He was finally arrested, but unfortunately, your family never quite got to see him face justice.
No, he served 4 months in prison. He was on the run, obviously, for 50 years, taking in the death, because he'd killed the boy's mother as well, 10 years before Chris and Peter. So he was on the run, going up and down the Californian coast, going over the Mexican border. Every time the police got anywhere near him, And yes, so he served 4 months, and then he decided to stop dialysis, told his doctors to stop all medication, and he died 3 weeks later, just 2 weeks before my mother and I were due to go over and give pre-trial evidence.
I mean, your father, who was a journalist, he spent a lot of time, as we said, trying to get to the bottom of this. Unfortunately, he died, but your mum has found out what happened to your brother.
Yes, it stopped the constant nagging, why did it happen? So she's now 93, got all her marbles. Yeah. She's fully aware of what's gone on. And for her, it has brought some closure. I think it's still very painful that we got so near to justice. And he would have gone down. I mean, the boys were fully prepared to give testimony against him.
Was it cathartic for you writing the book?
Very cathartic. It at times immensely depressing because it's such a black, dark story. But no, it was cathartic, and it was good to meet Russell, the younger son. I went over to California last summer to meet him in a very emotionally charged meeting. It was, but he was very honest and very open with me and told me everything, that had gone on the boat.
Well,
so.
We're really grateful to you for coming in.
Thank you.
You've come up. You now live in Oxford. You've come up especially to do this interview on the train. We're really grateful to you.
Thank you. I would just like to get one thing in, and that's just to say that my family are full of praise for the cold case unit at GMP.
At GMP, yes.
They were marvellous. They pulled out all the stops and were tremendous.
Well, we're glad that your family has had some closure on this.
Thank you.
And as Roger said, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Penny's book is called Dead in the Water. And it is available now.
It is, as we said, it's a remarkable story, isn't it?